Yes, who is this? अरे बाकीच्यांना येतोय, तू थोडं रेंज मध्ये ये. Okay. So in this lecture we are going to start with totality of symptoms. This is the demand from you, that is one of the topic. So in this lecture we will study that is totality of symptoms, and in short it is also called as a TOS, and in every exam, in every paper, the question is related to this TOS is repeatedly asked, that is regarding to totality of symptoms, and commonly it is asked as a TOS. So you have to understand that is TOS means totality of symptoms. So it is a general topic from the Organon, that is you must understand about what is the totality of symptoms. And in this the concept of totality of symptoms is peculiar to homeopathy. That is, homeopathy teaches us to treat the individual with a disease and not his diseased parts alone. Thus, all the signs and symptoms presented by the patient from the former healthy state to the now diseased condition are to be considered before we select the remedy. So, in homeopathy, we consider as we have to treat the human being as a whole or individual as a whole and not his only the diseased parts. So in this we consider the total human being as a whole, and to give the remedy to this disturbed condition of a human being or a disturbed state of a that patient, we have to prescribe the medicine, and that medicine must be prescribed on the basis of totality of symptoms, as we have to consider the total symptomatology of these human being, and on this we have to select the remedy. Thus all the signs and symptoms presented by the patient from the former healthy state to the now diseased condition are to be considered before we select the remedy. So this is related to the totality of symptoms, and totality of symptoms it having, from the exam point of view, we divided it into different parts, that is what we have to write or what we have to understand. So in this totality of symptoms we are going to discuss first point, that is introduction or the definition of totality of symptoms. Second point is regarding the, that is what is the remarks of different stalwart or the opinion of different pioneers of homeopathy regarding the totality of symptoms. Then next point we are going to discuss is the significance of totality of symptoms. That is, what is the significance of totality of symptoms in homeopathy. So you have to write about this, that is also the significance of totality of symptoms. Then next point we are going to discuss is the different attributes of the totality of symptoms, or we may call it as a different qualities of totality of symptoms. As to form the totality, what are the different conditions that may be present for the TOS. Then the last point we are going to discuss the importance of totality of symptoms, that is what is the importance of totality of symptoms, that we give that much importance to the TOS in homeopathy. So these are the different points we are going to discuss in TOS. So you have to also remember, according to the exam point of view, you have to write first definition or introduction, second point the opinion of different stalwarts or the pioneers, third point significance of totality of symptoms, then fourth point is qualities of totality of symptoms or the attributes, and lastly the importance of totality of symptoms. So in this the main theme of totality of symptom is that why you have to find the totality or you have to form the totality. So it is discussed as in homeopathy we have to treat the individual as a whole, and to treat that individual we take the signs and symptoms from that individual. from practical point of view, when we are speaking, that is, we are taking the case of patient as we record the signs and symptoms of the patient, and we have to collect the different signs and symptoms, and to we have to select the similar remedy on these signs and symptoms, and to select the remedy on these signs and symptoms as only from the signs and symptoms, it is very difficult task. So what we have to do, the next point, as we have to form the totality of that symptoms. And how we form the totality of symptoms means we go from this case in detail, and we find out what is the characteristic, what is the peculiar, what is the uncommon in that case. We do not only collect the symptoms, but we find out that totality, means we have to find some image in that all signs and symptoms, and that image may be similar, or that image may form the portrait of a disease, and that portrait of a disease may be matched with a portrait of a remedy. So we have to form a picture, or we have to form a portrait or an image on these signs and symptoms. We have to form some image or a picture or a portrait, and that portrait may be matched with the totality of some remedies. So this is the formation of portrait of a patient. So this we call it as a totality of symptoms, and totality of symptoms means only not a collection of symptoms, or only the sum of symptoms is not called as a totality, but on the basis of that totality, what symptoms you are taking for the totality, that may form the portrait, that may form the image or some picture that having that meaning, that may be matched with a portrait of a disease, remedy or the medicine. So in this way you have to find the totality of symptoms. So in this, the totality of symptoms constitute the true and the only conceivable portrait of the disease, and helps in individualizing the patient as well as the remedy. So when we form the portrait of a disease, and it helps in individualizing the patients as well as the remedy, and when we find that portrait on the basis of signs and symptoms with the help of totality of symptoms, that portrait of disease may individualize, that differentiate that individual from the patients as well as the remedy. That is how one patient is different from the other patient, and how one remedy is different from the other remedies. So in that way, that portrait of disease, what we find on the basis of totality of symptoms, it individualizes not only the patient but also the remedy. Thus it constitutes not only the sole guide to the choice of the curative remedy, but also to be removed in effecting the cure. So this is the introductory part of the totality of symptoms. And to understand the definition of totality of symptoms, it is the sum of the symptoms reflecting the individuality of the patient or the drug, that we call it as a totality of symptoms. Means only sum of symptoms is not the totality of symptoms. I again repeat it, only the sum of symptoms is not the totality of symptoms, but you have to remember as sum of the symptoms that reflecting the individuality of the patient and the drug, that some of the symptoms have that importance, or that may reflect the individuality of the patient or the drug, that we call it as a totality of symptoms, or TOS. So this is the definition of TOS. In this, the totality of symptoms constitute the true and only conceivable portrait of a disease, and helps in individualizing the patient as well as the remedy. So what is the totality? It constitutes the true and only conceivable portrait of disease, and it forms the portrait of disease and helps in individualizing the patient as well as the remedies. And that portrait of disease helps in the individualizing that patient and the remedy. So this is the definition of totality of symptom. Then the next point that is related to the totality of symptom is that the opinion or the different pioneers of homeopathy what told about the totality of symptoms. So in this, the first, Dr. Hahnemann, what he told about the totality of symptoms, that is, according to Dr. Hahnemann, the totality as the outwardly reflected picture of the internal essence of the disease, that is of the affection of the vital force, that is called as a totality of symptoms. So it is explained by Dr. Hahnemann in aphorism number 7. And while explaining the totality of symptoms, Dr. Hahnemann explained about the totality of symptoms in different aphorisms, that you will find the reference in different aphorisms of totality of symptoms, as it is mainly explained in aphorism number 7. Along with this, it is also explained footnote under aphorism number 7. Then you will also find the totality aphorism number 15, 16, 17, 18. Along with this, in aphorism number 22, 24, 25, 27, and lastly the aphorism number 70. All these aphorisms having the reference of totality of symptoms in Organon of Medicine of 6th edition. So these are the different aphorisms which gives the explanation about the totality of symptoms, or we find the reference of totality of symptoms in these aphorisms, that is explained by Dr. Hahnemann, that is. And what is he explained in aphorism number 7, that is the totality is the outwardly reflected picture of internal essence of the disease, that is what is the disease condition of internal man, how it is outwardly reflected, that picture we call it as a totality of symptoms, and that is the affection of the vital force. This is in aphorism number 7. But along with aphorism number 7, Dr. Hahnemann also explained the totality of symptoms in different aphorisms. I will again repeat these aphorisms, that is aphorism number 7, then 15, 16, 17, 18, 22, 24, 25, 27, and lastly the aphorism number 70, also having the reference of totality of symptoms, that is explained by Dr. Hahnemann. So this is the view of Dr. Hahnemann regarding the totality of symptoms, and for reference you may read these aphorisms in which you will find the totality of symptoms. Then next, according to the stored clause, how he defined the totality, as he defined the totality as the totality means the sum of the aggregate plus the idea or plan which unites them in a special manner to give them its characteristics forms. Here the totality means the sum of aggregate plus the idea or the plan which unites them in a special manner. So it is here sum is SUM, this is spelling mistake, that is the totality of symptoms means the sum of aggregate, that is SUM, sum of the aggregate plus the idea or the plan which unites them in a special manner. So it is the aggregate, along with this it is an idea or the plan which unite the special manner to give them its characteristic form. This idea gives the characteristic form of this totality of symptoms. So this is the definition according to the stored clause, or the opinion of stored clause for the totality of symptoms. Then according to H. Robert, he explained as the totality is the concrete form which the symptoms take when they are logically related to each other and stand forth an individuality recognizable by anyone who is familiar with the symptomatic forms and the lineaments of drugs and diseases. So according to H. Robert, the totality of symptoms the is that concrete form which the symptoms take when they are logically related to each other. That is, when we take the symptoms for the totality of symptoms, they must be logically related with each other, and they may form the concrete of that symptoms, and that stand forth an individuality recognizable by anyone who is familiar with the symptomatic forms and lineaments of drugs and disease, and that logical form of symptoms may form the individuality of that person that may be recognized, or anyone who is familiar with these symptomatic forms and the lineaments of the drugs and the disease. So this is the opinion of Dr. H. Robert for the totality of symptoms. Then nextly, what is the opinion of Dr. Boning Hussain, or the concept of Boning Hussain regarding the totality of symptoms? So according to the Boning Hussain, the totality of symptoms is not only the sum total of symptoms but is in itself one grand symptom, the symptom of the patient. So what is the opinion of Dr. Boning Hussain, as he thinks that the totality of symptoms is not only the sum of total of symptoms. That is, only the sum of total of symptoms means not the totality, but is in itself one grand symptom, the symptom of the patient. But what should be considered while considering the totality of symptom is that we have to consider the total form of symptoms, that is in the complete form. The symptom must be in a complete form, or it is itself a grand symptom. What is mean by that? Grand symptom means the symptom which is in the complete form, that is the symptom having its location, sensation, modalities concomitant, and the symptom must be present in a complete form. So this is the concept of Dr. Boning Hussain regarding the totality of symptom. Then nextly, the concept of Dr. Richard Hughes, he also explained about the totality of symptom as the totality of symptom is to the therapeutics the disease. Means we have to form the picture of a disease, and on that picture of the disease you have to find out the remedy for the disease condition. So this is the opinion of Richard Hughes. And nextly, the totality means not only the sum of aggregate of symptom, but also this other and the most important fact, all in true homeopathic prescribing, the totality of each individual symptom of the aggregate group. So while we consider the symptom, for the totality of symptom, we have to consider that individual symptom of the aggregate group, or the totality of each individual symptoms of the aggregate group. Means when we consider the symptoms, that symptom must be in a complete form, and that complete form symptoms form the totality of symptoms. So this is the second point, that is the opinion of different pioneers regarding the totality of symptoms. So in this way we finished the 2 points, that is first definition, second the opinion of different pioneers regarding the totality of symptoms. Now the third point, what is the significance of totality of symptoms? So in significance of totality of symptoms, we have to explain, or we have to give some idea about the significance of totality of symptoms. In this, the totality is not a mere haphazards or jumble of symptoms thrown together without rhyme or reason, not merely the numerical aggregate, the entire number of symptoms as particular or a single symptom, but totality means all the symptoms of the case which are capable of being logically combined into a harmonious and consistent whole having form, coherency, and individuality. So when we explain about the significance of totality of symptoms, in this the significance means what is its significance or importance of that totality of symptoms, or how you can explain about the totality of symptoms. So in this, the totality is not mere haphazards or the fruitless jumble of symptoms thrown together without any rhyme or reason. That is, it is not only the collection of symptoms, that is without any rhyme or reason, not merely the numerical aggregate, or it is not the numerical aggregate that having I having 20 symptoms, I having 50 symptoms. This is not the totality of symptoms. The entire number of symptoms as particular or a single symptoms, but what is mean by totality? That is, totality means all the symptoms of the case which are capable of being logically combined into a harmonious way. So what is mean by that totality? That is, we have to collect that symptoms of the case which are capable of being logically combined into a harmonious and the consistent whole, having form, coherency and individuality. That is, when we combine these symptoms that having a logical relation with each other, when we combine these symptoms, that symptoms may form the individuality of that patient or form the particular image or particular portrait of that individual. That portrait can be matched with the portrait of a medicine. So in this, as working machine, so in this they explain two example, that is one of the working machine and one of the picture. So what is the examples? That is regarding, as working machine is more than a numerical aggregate of its single dissociated parts, so the totality is more than the mere aggregate of its constituent symptoms. It is the numerical aggregate plus the idea or the plan which unites them in a special manner to give them its characteristic form, the individuality. As the parts of the machine cannot be thrown together in any manner, but each part must be fitted to each other part in a certain definite relation according to the preconceived plan or design assembled. As the machines say, so the symptoms of a case must be assembled in such a manner that they constitute an identity and individuality which may be seen and recognized as we recognize the personality of a friend. So that it is the symptom, so it is the symptom picture, harmonious combination of symptoms into a whole totality which express an idea about the individuality. So in this, for giving the significance of totality of symptoms, they explain about one example, that is of machine. That is, when we form any machine or made some machine is not only the aggregate of their parts in any way. That is, when we collect the all the parts of a machine in any way, this will not form the machine, but as we plan that, we have to form that particular machine. If we take the example of, that is, if we have to form the washing machine, so in that case we have to take the different parts and the what is the plan of that machine, that is how to form that washing machine. We have to collect that parts and join them in that manner that will leads to the machine that we call it as a washing machine, that we give them we give it a identity. So in that way, when we collect the symptom of a patient, that symptom of a patient must be presented in that form or that can be related to one another, that may give some identity to that totality, that is that identity to totality, and that may be matched with the totality of a medicine or a remedy. So this is one of the example that is regarding the machine. Then a picture of a work, picture is a work of art which appeals to our aesthetic sense as well as to our intellect. Its elements are from form, color, light, shade, tone, harmony, and perspective. As a composition, it expresses an idea. It may be the sentiment or the fact, but it does not this by the harmonious combination of its elements into a whole, the totality. In a well balanced picture, each element is given its full value, its right relation to all the other elements. Thus, the totality of symptoms implies the process of mental integration whereby the nearest approach to the concrete factual reality is effected. So in that case, when we consider the second example, that is of picture. First example we explain about the machine. Secondly, the second example is of a picture. If we form some picture, in that picture, when we form that picture, while forming the picture we have different things in our hands. That is, we have that imagination, we have that coloring, we have that form, light, shade, tone, harmony, and on the basis of that we have to form some picture. And when we uh, collect that things, or when we put that things in a proper manner, then and then only it will form the picture. If we cannot make some sense or imagination in a mind, and that cannot lead to that picture. So when forming the picture, it is also necessary that each thing will be in a proper way, and that can be arranged in a proper way. Then and then only it gives some picture that having some importance, or that having some significance. So in this way, when we are forming the totality of symptoms, in that case, while forming the totality of symptoms from number of signs and symptoms that were collected while recording the case of a patient, we have to form that totality in such a way that in our imagination, or what is the signs and symptoms, on the basis of that we can form that portrait of a disease, or that portrait of that particular individual, that individualizes that person from other persons also, and that also individualizes the remedy. That is, means that portrait of disease can be matched with the portrait of that medicine. And in this way we find the similar medicine in homeopathy that will give the permanent result for the cure of the patient. So in this way we have to find the totality, and for explaining the significance they explain two examples, that is first one of a machine and second one of the picture, or the portrait of any art. Then last of all, it must be mentioned that the term totality of symptoms refer not only the patient but also to the drug. That is, totality of symptoms that we consider, it is not only the totality of patient, but it is also the totality of the drug. So, in our materia medica, each drug has a large number of symptoms related with various pathological conditions of different parts of a body. So, each drug has its own type of mental and the physical symptoms. So, each of them must be clearly apprehended as the peculiar prototype of totality of particular type of disorder related with the particular parts of the whole organism. So, the combination of number of such various peculiar symptoms complexes makes the complete totality of that drug. So, in this they give one example regarding this, that is, we have to find the totality of patient also, and we have to find the totality of drug also. So, in this, the Naxomica has its own peculiar type of dysentery with its peculiar type of mental symptoms, etiological factors, headache, etc. It is also true in case of other medicines of our materia medica. So, as we form the totality of patient, in this way, there are the totality of medicines. That medicine must be proved on a healthy human being, and in this, in our materia medica, each drug has the large number of symptoms related with various pathological condition of the different parts of the body, and each has its own type of mental and the physical symptom. So when we are matching that totality with the individual, we have to form the totality of medicine and the totality of the patient. So this is the totality of the drug. So in this way, this is the significance of totality of symptoms, in which we explain about, that is, the totality of symptoms is not merely the collection of symptoms or the aggregate of symptoms, but when we form that totality, that may reflect the individuality of the patient or the individuality of the drug. So in this you have to explain two examples, that is of machine and that is of picture, and lastly the one example relating to the totality of the drug, that is of nux vomica. So this is the significance of totality of symptoms. So in this way we finish the 3 points relating to totality of symptoms. First, introduction or the definition. Secondly, the opinion of pioneers. Thirdly, the significance of symptoms. Now the fourth point is, that is, different attributes of totality of symptoms. What are the different attributes of totality of symptoms? And in this, a totality of symptoms, when properly drawn, will de- depict the individual case with all its features, personality, genus, characteristics, peculiarities, leading to exact therapeutic diagnosis. Such a totality of symptoms should have the following attributes to which the case record may be analyzed. So these are the different qualities or the attributes of the totality of symptoms on which we have to form the totality that must be matched with the totality of medicine or the remedy, or we have to make the therapeutic diagnosis. What is mean by therapeutic diagnosis? That is the selection of the remedy for these cases, that we call it as a therapeutic diagnosis, and in which there are different points regarding it. The first point is, or the first point of attribute is, each of the symptom must be complete with regards its sensation, location, modality and concomitant. That is, when we are going to make the totality of symptoms, in that, in our hand there are symptoms, but the symptoms must be present in a complete form as regards to their sensation, their location, modality and concomitant. Then secondly, the symptoms should have a chronological order of development and the progress. The symptoms what we collect in a case recording, that should be collected in that form, that is having the chronological order of development and the progress. That is how diseases progress, how each and every, or the how the miasm is developed in that patient, that must be present in a chronological order, or the development and the progress of that symptom. Then next, they must be divisible. They must be divisible into subjective and objective ones. That is, what the symptoms is in our hand, that must be differentiated into subjective symptoms and the objective symptoms. Subjective symptoms are the symptoms that is told by the patient, and the objective symptoms that are observed by the physician in that patient. So then next attribute is that the symptom must be divisible into generals and particulars. That is what we collect, that must be divisible into generals and particulars. Means what are the general symptoms and what are the particular symptoms. General symptoms indicate the human being as a whole, and particular symptoms, that is, that indicates the particular part of a body. The next, each of the general or the particular symptoms must be differentiated as a common and uncommon. Also, we have to differentiate that symptom into common symptoms and the uncommon symptoms. So, in that case, the common symptoms are the important for the diagnosis of a disease condition, and the uncommon symptoms are important for the diagnosis of that patient or the diagnosis of that individuality. Then next, the grade of each of the symptoms must be properly noted. That is, what is the grade of each symptom? That is, what is the importance of that each symptom, that must be properly noted while taking the symptom for the totality. Then the peculiar combination or concomitance or alteration of certain symptoms, if present, must be clearly noted. That is, what is the combination or the concomitants or the alternating symptoms, that must be clearly noted while recording the symptoms. Then environmental, occupational and the exogenous influences on the case must be depicted or the noted. So in that case, if there are some environmental changes, occupational changes that can be noted, then the background of the case from the past history, social reference to various forms of separations and the family history must be taken in review. So while taking the symptoms, that symptoms must give the importance that is relating to the background of the case, that is what is the past history of the patient, what is the family history of the patient and all that. Yes, can I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in this way we finished the what are the different attributes of the totality of symptoms, and now the next part is the importance of totality of symptoms. So what is the importance of totality of symptoms? In this, the sole guide in the choice of a homeopathic remedy. What is the main importance of totality of symptom is that is it is the sole guide in the choice of the homeopathic remedy. That is, to select the homeopathic remedy, you must know the totality of symptom, as the totality of symptoms is the outwardly reflected picture of the internal essence of the disease. So there is no other mean of ascertaining the nature of the remedy that the patient needs, as it is expressed in aphorism number 18. So in this way, what is the sole guide of the choice of the remedy or the homeopathic remedy? You must know about the totality of symptoms. As you know that the totality of symptoms is the outwardly reflected picture of the internal essence of the disease, and to note that you must know about the totality of symptoms for the selection of choice of a homeopathic remedy. Then the totality of symptoms, nothing can by any means be discovered in a disease wherewith they could express their need. That is, totality is nothing can be any means be discovered in diseases wherewith they could express their need. So this is the second. And the third one is the sum of all the symptoms in each individual case of disease must be sole indication, sole guide to direct us in the choice of a remedy. So all these points are same and related to the same point, that is, what is the importance of totality of symptoms, that is the sole guide for the choice of a homeopathic remedy. And in this, the totality of symptoms is to be removed by effecting the cure. The term refers not only the patient but also equally to the drug. And second, most important importance of totality of symptom is that the totality of symptoms is to be removed in effecting the cure, and it is not only related to the totality of symptoms but it is also important, equally important for the totality of a drug. So totality of symptoms, it reflects the individuality of the patient also and the individuality of the drug also. So this is the importance of totality of symptoms. So this is the importance of totality of symptoms, that is sole guide in the choice of a homeopathic remedy. And to the totality of symptoms is to be removed in effecting the cure. That is, to effect a cure or to form the cure in a patient, the totality of symptom must be removed from the patient. When you remove that totality from the patient, then your patient is said to be in a cure. So this is the importance of totality of symptoms. Along with this point, you also add one point, that is the sources of symptoms in totality of symptoms. That is, what are the different sources of symptoms for the totality of symptoms. So in this you may add, that is the sources of symptom as the symptoms that is collected from the patient, that is collected from the attendant, and that is collected from the physician himself. So this may be the one additional point regarding the totality of symptoms, that is the sources of symptoms for the totality. So in this way we completed the totality of symptoms. So what is mean by totality of symptoms? That is the sum of the symptoms reflecting the individuality of the patient and the drug. While indicating the sum of symptoms, you have to write, that is the sum of symptoms reflecting the individuality of the patient and the drug, that we call it as a totality of symptoms. Then nextly we also explain it as a, that is, you have to explain the totality of symptom is peculiar to homeopathy, and homeopathy teaches us to treat the individual with a disease and not his disease parts alone. Thus, all the signs and symptoms presented by the patient from the former healthy state to be now diseased condition are to be considered before we select the remedy. So this is the introductory part of the totality of symptom or the definition. Then second point is opinion of different pioneers regarding the totality of symptoms, and you have to explain the different opinion of different pioneers. Then third point, you have to explain about the significance of totality of symptoms. In this you have to explain that totality means not a collection of symptoms in randomly, but to collect the symptom in that way that it form the portrait of a disease. And in this you have to give two examples, that is of a machine, and secondly of a picture, that is the drawing of some picture. And thirdly in this you have to explain that is there is only not only the totality of patient, but you have to consider the totality of that particular drug also, and you have to give one example, that is of Naxomica. Then in next point you have to give the different attributes of totality of symptoms. You have to explain the different points regarding what should be the different attributes of totality of symptoms, and lastly you have to explain the importance of totality of symptoms. So in this way we finish the totality of symptoms. All of you understand or any difficulty regarding it? Yes, all of you understand?
Yes, madam.
Okay. uh, then next part is remaining, that is memory, or any topic you want to take in today, sorry, in tomorrow's lecture. Yes.